How often have you heard someone say, I know what I should be doing, but I know what I should be doing, but I just haven't been doing it, or any other variation of lame excuse? People say that phrase so casually, almost flippantly, as if it were as simple as flipping on a light switch. I know what I should be doing to lose the 25 pounds I've wanted to lose for years, but I'm just not doing it. As if the gap between where they are and where they want to be is so small, as if they could just snap their fingers and arrive there. But the truth is, for most people, that gap isn't a gap at all. It's a chasm. And chasms don't get crossed by good intentions. They get crossed with help. Many people aren't failing because they don't care. They're failing because they're missing skills. They're missing perspective. They're missing structure. They're missing the mindset required to bridge that distance. And in many cases, what they're missing is a coach. What skin in the game really means. When I talk about skin in the game, I'm talking about commitment, emotional, and oftentimes financial. I can't tell you how many times clients have said to me at the gym, especially at the end of the day, if I didn't have this session booked with you today, I wouldn't be here. They had a bad night's sleep. They had a rough day at work. Their dog was sick. They had a stressful morning. Any excuse will do. Left to their own devices, those motions would have won. They would have rationalized just going home from work. But because they had skin in the game, but because they had made that commitment to be there with me, they showed up anyway. Their skin in the game has enormous value. Information isn't the problem. Part of the value of a coach is to provide knowledge and wisdom, especially in nutrition. But let's be honest, we don't suffer from a lack of information. We suffer from too much information. We carry the world's information in our pockets, largely for free. It is endless. And unfortunately, much of it contradicts itself. The real skill isn't finding the information, the skill is in distilling it, knowing what matters, knowing what applies to your life, and then applying it long enough to see the results. Even then, information alone still isn't enough. I can hand someone a perfectly structured meal plan on paper, flawless, tailored just for them. But if I leave them to execute on their own without coaching, the odds of their success dramatically drop. Which brings us right back to the same conclusion. You still need a coach. The coach is a catalyst. I love the following quote by the late, great Tom Landry. A coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you know you always knew you could be. Left to ourselves, we will let ourselves down all day long, right and left. But for a coach, but for the right relationship, people will run through brick walls. When you look at the greatest coaches in history, what stands out isn't just the number of wins, it's how those wins were sustained over time. Take Nick Saban. Year after year at Alabama, players would come, players would go. Seniors would graduate, underclassmen left early for the NFL. Recruits arrived with wildly different backgrounds, skill levels, and levels of maturity. Injuries happened, depth charts changed. Nothing about the roster was static. And yet, the results remain remarkably consistent for years. The same can be said, perhaps even more so, for John Wooden at UCLA. Wooden's teams won 10 national championships in 10 years. That kind of dominance is almost impossible to comprehend, especially at the college level. Every 4 years, the roster turns over. Players graduated, new players came in, some stayed, some struggled, some flourished, and still the standard never dropped. That's the key point. The common denominator in both programs, it wasn't the players, it was the system. It was the standards, the expectations, the culture, the daily processes. Nick Saban didn't build Alabama around individual stars. He built it around a process of excellence. John Wooden famously focused so little on winning that many players said they barely heard the word mentioned. Instead, he obsessed over preparation, fundamentals, character, and doing the things the right way every single day. That magic wasn't talent alone. It was leadership. It was structure. It was coaching. And this is where the parallel to fitness and to nutrition becomes obvious. People don't struggle because they lack desire or intelligence. They struggle because left on their own, there is no system, no standard, no process, no outside voice to help them stay consistent when motivation fades, and it will, and life get messy, and it is often. A good coach doesn't just provide information. A good coach builds a framework, one that makes success more likely even on the days when discipline is low and excuses are loud and high. That's exactly how great coaching works in real life. Left to themselves, people drift. They default to comfort. They rationalize inconsistency. But under the guidance of a strong coach, someone who establishes clear standards, simplifies the process, and holds people accountable, ordinary individuals consistently do extraordinary things, not because they became different people, but because they were placed inside a system that demanded more of them than they ever would have demanded of themselves on their own. And that's where skin in the game matters. When someone commits financially, emotionally, or relationally, they step into a system. They show up differently. They listen differently. They act differently. Not because the coach is magical, but because the commitment itself changes the dynamic. That commitment is what transforms potential into progress, effort into results, and intention into lasting change and progress. That's what great coaching does. It acts as a catalyst, distilling the noise. Leadership expert John Maxwell once said that the difference between a speaker and a communicator is that a communicator can take a complex, high level information topic and put the cookies on the bottom shelf so everyone can reach them. That's coaching. In nutrition, that might sound something like this: I want you to eat 4 meals a day. I want you to have protein at every meal, at least 35 grams. Stop reading every blog post. Stop watching every YouTube video. You're tying yourself in freaking knots. That level of clarity for that individual, that's what they need, and it's invaluable. Accountability multiplies results. Jack Canfield, co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, shares something that it's always stuck with me. Simply writing a goal down as getting it out of your head onto paper will increase your chances of success to about 42%. But when you add an accountability partner, that number jumps to about 76%. It almost doubles. Not because they're experts, not because they're doing the work for you, but because you know you have to go spill your guts and report to them how you've been doing. That's accountability, and it's powerful. The best in the world all have coaches. The most successful people in the world, athletes, executives, actors, business leaders, they all have coaches. Professional golfers, they're a perfect example. Swing coach, short game coach, mental coach, fitness coach, nutrition coach, putting coach, maybe. From the business world, Harvey McKay is another example. How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive was the first personal development book I ever received. I was a junior in college for Christmas. Harvey's now in his 90s, and he's still actively working with multiple coaches at any given time. Why? Because growth never stops, and Harvey has a growth mindset, and neither does coaching. Change requires change. I learned this lesson the hard way. In the early 90s, I had a mentor named Walter Pate, lives in Midland, Texas. He's an architect. He was my sponsor, in many ways my coach in a sales and marketing business. We had a weekly accountability call, structured, consistent, and intentional. In other words, I did exactly what so many people say they want to do. I reached out for help. Walter and his wife Marie, they were incredibly patient with me. I was young, inexperienced, and short on confidence. Emotionally, I was all over the place. One week I was on fire, the next week I was down in the dumpster. Prospecting adults who were 10, 20, or 30 years older or more than me was terrifying for the most part, and I struggled to do the work consistently. But here's the part that matters. Walter did his job. He showed up. He listened. Did I mention that he was patient? He guided. He held me accountable. I didn't always do the work. One day, very calmly and without criticism, he said something that stopped me in my tracks. He wasn't being harsh or scolding, although he was like a dad to me. He was simply being honest. He said, I know you're not happy with where you are in life. He said, I know you want so much more, and we've talked about it. But if you're not willing to do anything different, you're going to look back in 5 or 10 or however many years with the same frustrations you have now. In fact, they're going to be multiplied. Then he said something I've never forgotten: change requires change. And he was right. The system was there, the coaching was there, the accountability was there. What was missing was my willingness to consistently listen and take action. I didn't fail because I lacked support. I failed because I wasn't willing to do the work long enough to earn the results. And that distinction matters because a coach, he isn't a wizard, or they are not a wizard. They don't have a magic wand. Coaching doesn't override personal responsibility, it amplifies it. When you choose to work with a coach, you're not outsourcing the work, you're committing to it. That lesson has stayed with me for life. Bottom line, from the year 2000 until today, obesity rates have climbed unbelievably despite unlimited access to information. The problem isn't knowledge, the problem is application and persistence. We live in a microwave, instant gratification society. People want quick fixes. Can you say GLP-1 agonist or whatever the latest nutrition gimmick happens to be? Now, in all fairness, no hate. GLP-1s are remarkable drugs, but they're not magic bullets. And if you're not willing to change your eating behavior long term, you're wasting your time and money. I've worked with multiple clients on those drugs, and you have to change your food. And besides, success doesn't work that way. Success takes hard freaking work, and the rent is due every day. Left to their own devices, most people will struggle. That's why coaching matters. A coach guides, encourages, simplifies, holds you accountable, picks you up when you fall, and yes, occasionally delivers a well timed strategic kick in the pants. That's skin in the game. And that's why it works. Call to action. If my message resonated with you, here's a simple question worth sitting with. If you truly want a different result, what are you willing to do differently? For some people, that means continuing to go at it alone, and that's okay. For others, it means finally putting skin in the game, seeking guidance, accountability, and support instead of relying on willpower and good intentions. If you're tired of knowing what you should be doing and want some help and actually do it, I'd be honored to come along beside you. You can start by subscribing to my channel where I share practical insights on training, nutrition, recovery, and long term health. And if you're interested in personalized coaching, whether that's fitness, nutrition, or lifestyle support, you're welcome to reach out and start a conversation. Please click on Work with Kelly in the notes below. No pressure, no gimmicks, just an honest discussion about where you are, where you want to go, and whether working together makes sense. Because real change starts when you decide to stop going it alone. Best of luck in your journey.